the 383 in COPMARO has run its course. After years of autocrossing, there's a vibration in the engine that can't be solved. It's time for a new engine as we get the car ready for this year's SEMA show. LS swap, crate small block Chevy, custom engine build. We spent months trying to figure out which direction to head. We decided that my dad's 355 sitting in the garage was the best option. This is an engine that was actually built for the magazines about 20 years ago. It ran on the Dyno and then never found a home. Before putting the 355 in COPMARO, I wanted to make sure the engine had a clean bill of health. My friend Evan Perkins, former editor-in-chief at Hot Rod and new owner of Westech, said to bring it over and he would go through it.
I'm Evan with Westech, and we're building another small block Chevy. My friend Ryan brought this thing over. It was an old 90s, early 2000s magazine motor, and we thought, okay, we'll stuff a new cam in it, clean it up, re-ring, re-bearing, and we'll be in good shape. That was not the case. It had water in it. At some point in storage, some water got into a cylinder, rusted it out, and unfortunately, we're back to a bare block, starting from scratch. So we thought, while we're there, we're gonna make this thing a 383. We sent it out to JMS Racing Engines. They bored the engine at 60 over now, and then we turned to Summit Racing to get all of our parts to turn this 350 into a 383. So we're going with a 3.75 stroke cast crank, which is an exceptionally good budget crank. You know, for a street level horsepower and reasonable RPM, it's the cheapest way to add displacement to a 350. So we're doing that. We've got a good forged piston, a good forged connecting rod, and we're gonna put a little bit of camshaft in this thing. And what's really cool is this is gonna be a throwback engine that looks like a tune port. So this would have been like the coolest thing you could put in your tune port Camaro, you know, back in the early 90s. So we're gonna flip the engine over, install the main bearings, install the crankshaft, install one connecting rod and piston, and then we're gonna roll that over in each cylinder so we can see where, if anywhere, we have clearance problems. Then we'll take a die grinder, open the block up, make sure we've got plenty of room for the rotating assembly to swing, and then we'll move on to putting the rest of it together.
Having Evan build this 383 for me was a really cool experience. Evan and I have filmed a ton of videos on engine builds and dyno days. Recently, Evan had the opportunity to purchase Westech Performance and keep the legacy of the dyno moving forward. And because of that, we will be able to get the 383 on the dyno to get some numbers and break in the engine.
After clearancing the block, we were able to install our SCAT 383 crankshafts. That's a 3.75 stroke. We went with a 6-inch Summit Racing H-beam connecting rod. And because this thing's gonna turn some RPM and make some real power, we went with a really nice piston. This is a Mala flat top piston. We also got the front cover installed. This is a really trick Summit Racing 2-piece timing cover. And this is a Summit Racing adjustable timing set. So the cylinder heads are AFR 210 Enforcers. Those were on the original engine, and that's such a great cylinder head that we decided to have them machined and reuse them. That 210cc runner is gonna be really nice with our 383. Should make a little over 500 horsepower with our comp 236, 242 hydraulic roller cam. I think this is gonna be a really nice engine, and that camshaft has a wide lobe separation angle. So when it's paired with the heads, I think it's gonna carry RPM really well and also give a really clean map single for the fuel injection.
With the engine build complete, Evan brought it down to Westech and put it on the dyno. Now, because we were working on a SEMA timeline, we didn't get our first performance TPI intake mounted for the dyno test. Evan ended up using a dual plane intake, and the engine made 472 horsepower and 482 foot-pounds of torque. Evan said that a single plane intake on this engine would be good for 20 more horsepower. With the 383 dynoed and broken in, the engine made its way back to our In the Garage Media Tech Center and was ready for some paint.
All right, so we just got our 383 back from Westech. I'm gonna tape off some areas. We're gonna paint it with this KBS Coatings motor coater. We've got gloss black, and we're gonna go ahead and brush it on because it's supposed to lay really flat, which is good for us because if we were gonna spray this, we don't wanna paint the heads, we don't wanna paint the timing cover, so if we were gonna spray it, it'd be a lot more masking, a lot more work. So we're gonna brush this on, it'll look really good. As you can see, we don't have a lot of surface to cover, so the brushing will make it nice and easy. All right, so we've got our 383 painted, it's detailed, it's pretty much ready to rock. The next step before we put this motor in the car is we're going to install this Eddie Motorsports S-Drive kit. This is an accessory kit. Of course, we've got all three accessories that are standard fare and these kind of builds. AC, we got a PowerMaster alternator, got a high amp alternator. This guy's rated at like what, 176 amps at the top end. That's pretty good. We've also got our power steering pump with the Eddie Motorsports reservoir built into it, so that's pretty cool. This is a super compact unit. It won't take up a bunch of space, so we won't have any issues with like fender clearance or anything like that. It tucks everything up real nice, as you can see. It's all real close right here, close to the block, right in front of the heads. So this satin black kit will look really good in our Camaro. So when it comes to installing this S-Drive kit, as you can see, Eddie Motorsports does a really nice job with their instructions. It's step by step. You basically put the bracket on, some of the other bracketry that you see here for like the water pump and stuff, and then each accessory kind of bolts to that. So it's super easy to figure out. And it even gives you like what size bolts are for what location in case you open everything up and it gets all mixed up. No big deal. This is like an hour or two tops of a job, pretty easy. It's a good evening job if your motor is kind of ready to rock.
With the Eddie Motorsports S-Drive installed, it was time to start getting the first TPI intake assembled. This was a product recommended by Jeremy over at FiTech. He actually has one mounted up to his Firebird. This first TPI intake gives the nostalgia look, but with more CFM and airflow than the stock intake. Ryan won't be completing the intake assembly because FiTech will still need to add some of their sensors once it gets back to their shop.
We have our S-Drive system installed. We've got the alternator in place. We've ran both charging cables and a ground cable for the alternator. This is super important because, as you can see, our whole S-Drive system is either powder coated or it's anodized. It's got a finish on everything. In other words, grounding through the body of the alternator and the bracket and the engine and all that kind of stuff, you're fighting all those finishes, right? So it's important to add a ground. On the positive side, I found this little junction block under the carpet on the passenger side because a previous owner had relocated the battery to the back into the trunk. We moved it back up front where it's supposed to be in the stock location, which meant we had to make new cables. So I utilized this same junction point and I went from the alternator to that, the battery to that, and then from that to the starter so that we don't have anything hanging out on the starter other than the battery cable. Previously, in its stock form, we had at least 3 wires connected to it with fusible links, and you could see what happens when a fusible link gets too close to the exhaust. No bueno. So I cut those 3 wires off. I mounted a little fuse panel for that, and now I'm protecting those 3 circuits with fuses. Power's coming off the battery terminal right here that I installed, and then we're also feeding our FiTech straight off of that too, so everything gets power through the battery cable directly. One of the last things we need to do is get this thing to the exhaust shop. So before we do that, we got to mount some headers. We had an aftermarket exhaust, but it had a bunch of holes in it. Water gets in the system, it rots, it rusts through. So we're going to replace the whole exhaust, and we're going to start with this set of Hedman headers. This is a set of mid-length headers. These work with angle plug heads as well as straight plug heads. We had straight plug heads in the motor that we pulled out of this with stock manifolds with all the heat riser junk for the emission stuff, the smog stuff. They're ugly, so we got rid of those. This is an angle plug head equipped motor, so we needed a header that will work with the angle plug. So the stock ones were not an option even if we wanted to try to make them work. These aren't gonna bolt right up to the rest of the existing exhaust, the back half. So we got a transition, a 2-in-1 transition from Hedman as well. And then we went ahead and sent this all out to our buddy Dave at Cerakote SoCal, and he put this beautiful silver Cerakote finish on there. It's gonna be super durable. It's gonna look great forever. It's not gonna discolor. It withstands high temperatures, which obviously you need that, especially for the headers. So yeah, we're gonna throw this on there really carefully, and then we're gonna get this car over to the exhaust shop.
Dude, hell yeah, look at that.
Yeah, what do you think?
It's pretty cool.
We took the car over to the muffler man in Orange County, and he fabricated an exhaust with a MagnaFlow muffler. I really can't wait to hear how this car sounds. Next stop is FiTech. Jeremy is working on hooking back up the FiTech TPI kit and installing our 42 pound/hour FIC injectors, as recommended by Evan Perkins. Jeremy also stabbed a new FiTech distributor and installed a FiTech fuel regulator. As with any shop, friends stopped by FiTech and couldn't resist helping get the engine to the finish line. Kevin and Harrison Beach, also known as the Beach Boys, helped get the engine completed, and it was time to turn the key. When the engine fired, there was a small vacuum leak and a couple other things that needed to be addressed. But it sure feels good to have the car up and running again. Jeremy spent some time doing a basic tune because TMI needs to get working on the interior. He pulled it out of the shop to get the transmission hooked up, and man, the car sounds amazing. One thing I haven't mentioned is that while we were replacing the engine, we also decided to ditch the 700 R4 and get a Gearstar 4L60E. In the next episode, we'll dive into the transmission for this car, take a tour of Gearstar, and actually watch the transmission getting built. For now, it's time to drive the car for the first time and get it over to TMI for the interior transformation. It's October 21st, and SEMA is less than 2 weeks away. The car still needs interior, brakes, wheels, and a final tune. It's a lot of stress for everyone involved, but getting behind the wheel and driving the car for the first time with a new drivetrain really took my mind off of everything for a moment. If you want to see the rest of our 3rd gen COPMARO build and its debut at the SEMA show, make sure to subscribe to our All Chevy Performance channel.